Hey, freshmen, we'll start our lecture here for today on Chapter 4, starting Chapter 4 on resources and land use. Later on in the chapter, Section 2, we'll get into some economic activity and kind of wrap that up. It's a very short chapter, just 2 sections long, and I think a lot of it should be review for you guys. But kind of getting into it, discussing natural resources first. That's kind of what we'll focus on here today. Natural resources, talking about the difference between renewable and non-renewable resources. So a natural resource is anything that occurs naturally within the earth that people will use to meet some sort of need, okay, or want. Okay, oftentimes these materials are going to have some sort of value. So something like lumber, for example, is a natural resource in the sense that people use lumber to build with. People use lumber as a source of fuel. Mr. Rowe uses lumber to smoke ribs, okay, etc. Lumber is a natural resource. It's something that occurs naturally within the earth. Water, same thing. It's also a natural resource. It occurs naturally within the earth. It also happens to be a renewable resource, meaning that it is naturally replenished via the water cycle. Okay, but these natural resources are then used for a variety of things, whether it's producing energy or as a medium of exchange, etc. Those things are then used for some purpose. Okay, so discussing renewable resources first. And so again, a renewable resource is something that can be replenished. In other words, it's quote unquote, it's not going to run out, and it will get replenished naturally through the way our environment works. So again, using something like water, just for an example, we have a water cycle, where again, the way our weather systems and everything, how that works, water is constantly evaporating. It's getting soaked up into the atmosphere. The atmosphere then there's precipitation and runoff, and our water eventually gets replenished, okay, over the course of time. Solar energy is something that's also renewable, okay? Even though the sun might not be shining, we can use solar panels, and we're constantly getting sunlight, right? If the sun were to burn out, that would be really bad for human life on Earth, but it hasn't happened yet. So keep that in mind as a renewable resource. It's something that's constantly being replenished, something that's renewable in the sense that it's not going to run out. Then we compare that to a non-renewable resource. So just the polar opposite. These do not get replaced. Sorry, my daughter's rolling around in her bed right now, and it's super cute. So if my train of thought here is a little off. But again, a non-renewable resource, it does not get replaced. In other words, once these resources run out, they're out. We cannot replenish them. Okay, so. And again, these non-renewable resources, a lot of them are very old. So we use like fossil fuels, for example. So fossil fuels are big three: coal, oil, and natural gas. Those were created from the remains of ancient organisms over the course of time as they dissolved and such, and then soaked deeper into the earth. So something like petroleum or oil, excuse me, is a natural gas. If you ever seen the movie Mrs. Doubtfire, the Raptor Rap, check it out. Okay, I'm a raptor doing what I can, gonna eat everything till the existence of man. Yo, see me. I'm living above the soil. I'll be back, but I'm coming as oil. Okay, that is the Raptor Rap, basically discussing how those dinosaurs turned into fossil fuels. The remains of dinosaurs eventually broke down and became things like coal, oil, and natural gas. And those are things we're very reliant on those in the United States. Your house is probably heated by one of those things indirectly. I mean, even like electricity, so much electricity is produced by the burning of coal that's a non-renewable resource. Once coal is gone, it's gone. Now, I don't think it's anything that we're going to have to deal with in our lifetime, but you hear about if coal were to ever run out, the catastrophe that would cause worldwide, it'd be pretty huge. Okay. Now, the other thing too with the use of non-renewable resources such as fossil fuels, oftentimes those are quote unquote not viewed as being quite so much eco-friendly, I guess, not so much friendly to the environment and such, but nonetheless they are the most common source of energy, what we use to produce things like electricity, for example. So, and again, in North Dakota, we are a hub of natural resources. We have some of the biggest coal deposits in the country in our state. We also, again, way out west, are part of the Bakken Formation, and we have a lot of petroleum or oil that we use and we drill for the purpose of profits and such. Okay, but again, we started talking how do we manage these resources, and again, it's something that it's been a hot button issue for quite some time as regards to non-renewable resources. So then with these types of resources, we get into energy. And again, oftentimes natural resources are used to produce some sort of energy. Okay. Um, Again, we had said already that fossil fuels are very old, okay, remains of ancient organisms. It's probably the most heavily used source of energy. And again, not everywhere in the world has access to these things. Okay. Do a lot of places rely on the burning of coal for the purpose of producing electricity? Yes. Does every place? No. Like the state of California, I actually just had the conversation with my father-in-law tonight about California and how California does not actually have any power plants within the state, and that most of the electricity for the state of California is produced from the Hoover Dam out by Las Vegas, or dams in Oregon or Washington, and how they don't actually have a power plant. And that was something I was visiting with him about. It was really interesting. But fossil fuels are probably they're the most common use of energy, right? That we break down fossil fuels, whether it's burning of coal or natural gas, etc., for the purpose of energy. Same with oil, right? Petroleum in a lot of cases gets turned into some sort of fuel, whether it's gasoline or diesel fuel. And again, there's all kinds of, the past 10 years, even 20 years, there's been all kinds of, as far as like automobiles and transportation, there's been all kinds of research done to see how we can limit the use of petroleum, for more than just the reason it might run out, but also for potential eco reasons as well. Talk about nuclear energy, and nuclear energy is pretty interesting. Nuclear energy is super efficient. It's super clean. The only thing is that nuclear power, the way that it's produced, it requires the splitting of uranium. Uranium is a mineral that through the process of fission, as uranium gets broken down, they can produce a huge amount of electricity and a huge amount of power. So keeping that in mind, and when you start saying using the word nuclear, and you think back to like World War II and how some of the bombs that were used, some of the weapons that were used were nuclear, it's kind of scary. We know the potential of nuclear power and what it could do if it's not handled correctly. But nuclear power itself, assuming that the fission process is done correctly, nuclear power is super efficient. It's super clean, in the sense that it's not going to burn any holes in the atmosphere or anything like that. But you look at some of the issues around the world with nuclear energy. It occurs when the fission process doesn't go well, right? So we start looking at like Chernobyl out in the Ukraine and the old Soviet Union, what happened there. There's actually a really interesting series on HBO about that. We also can look at 3 Mile Island out in New York, in the 70s or 80s when there were some issues there. So assuming that, nuclear energy is used properly and that the fission process goes smoothly, it's super clean, it's super efficient, but the concern becomes if there is some sort of nuclear waste that gets its way into the environment, whether it's through a nuclear meltdown or, a reactor exploding or something like that. There's some concerns over that. So we talk about water power or hydropower. Things like dams oftentimes get built to produce this. So like the Colorado River that was dammed off during the Great Depression south of Las Vegas, Nevada, to create the Hoover Dam. There's other dams even around the state of North Dakota, and those dams, some of them are hydroelectric. They're using that dam, they're harnessing the power of that flowing body of water to produce electricity. And again, that's something that's renewable. It's viewed as being a clean energy source. And again, some of these dams are really powerful. Like the Hoover Dam provides a lot of the power for the state of California and Nevada. So it's pretty impressive what that's all capable of doing. Talk about geothermal energy. So that's harnessing power from internally within the earth. A lot of homes and buildings have become geothermal. I'm pretty sure, I would have to do a little additional research on this, but I'm pretty sure when our school had some of the some of our renovations a few years ago, I'm pretty sure there are parts of our school that are powered through geothermal heat. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure we have parts of our heating source that are geothermal. And again, I have a buddy who has geothermal heat in his house, and it was super expensive to have it installed. But unlike natural gas, he doesn't have a huge heating cost. He can turn his house up as hot as he wants, and his power bill doesn't really go up because he's not using that natural gas to power his house. It's really interesting how the geothermal how it works. It's kind of spendy, but again, it's also viewed as being very clean energy, a renewable source of energy where we're not burning any fossil fuels to produce it. And then we talk about solar energy. And again, there's there's varying opinions on this, but solar panels are sometimes placed around buildings for the purpose of harnessing light from the sun and then using that light to produce some sort of electricity, right? Some of you that might have campers or something, sometimes some of the newer campers have solar panels on them, and you can actually run your camper off solar power, like some of the appliances and such. It's kind of interesting. But again, it's used from light from the sun. Even so, like when it's not sunny, like we had an overcast day like we did today, Sunday, there's still rays coming down, and solar panels can still collect energy. And again, it's viewed as being very clean and a renewable source of energy. So those are just some. I mean, we could get into wind power too. Wind power, same idea. You have these huge wind turbines. I know there's some out by Valley City, and they're talking about building some out actually by Castleton. And that's another renewable source where we can use the power from the wind and harness that to produce electricity. So understanding again here, different energy sources, renewable, non-renewable sources, and talking about that. I'm sure it's mostly review for you guys. As always, if you have questions, please let me know. And again, make sure you're recording your notes here. Okay, you guys have a good day.